I wanted to talk about something I think you could call the polylogism of gun control. What I mean by that is that most gun control proponents basically have a double standard that's not consistent. What I mean by that is they do exist, although I've almost never met them. People who say they really want a society without any guns in it, because almost all gun control proponents, when they say they want to ban guns or whatever, they only mean for certain classes. They mean for citizens, unless they usually still want, police and military to have guns. And a society that still has police and military is not really a totally disarmed society. It's a society with two classes in it. And why I call this polylogism is because they basically have these two completely different characteristics that they ascribe to the two groups. So when a private citizen either owns a gun or carries a gun, it's claimed. Sometimes it's just implied, but usually it's pretty explicit that that citizen owning a gun is bad. They'll be dangerous. They're inept. They'll accidentally kill somebody. They will purposely kill somebody. They will lose self-control and go on a rampage, and every manner of travesty will occur. At the same time, if a person has a badge, is a police officer or a military personnel, that they can take that weapon and maybe not do no wrong. They get, at the very least, they can handle it. They won't go and be crazy. They won't go on a rampage. They won't make the wrong mistake. And this is just indefensible. This double standard. There is no evidence at all that the fact that you are in government service in some sector, that you can overcome inclinations that the rest of people can, the rest of society can't. If a gun actually made a person homicidal, there's no evidence that if you gave that person a badge that they would be able to resist that. And empirically, governments kill like way more people than private citizens do. And this is there's good if you there's no basis. It just doesn't even make sense to say, oh, if we give the citizen a gun, he'll be a rampage person, but the government can have a gun. No big deal. And so, in this sense, I really respect the very few gun control advocates who are actually consistent and say that all guns should be banned. I can actually respect that. And actually, if I had magic powers and could make all weapons vanish or whatever, I would be tempted to do that. Unfortunately, that will never happen, and gun bans are always going to be unilateral. One group is always not going to give up their guns. And one person put it very well. I heard, parity of power promotes peaceful solutions. When you have one group, it doesn't have to be the government or the police. It could be a church or an ethnicity. When one group has guns and another one doesn't, that's a recipe for oppression. And every other, the worst things possible can happen in that situation. Now, if you have a situation where everybody's armed, that doesn't mean everyone's going to love each other. That doesn't mean there won't ever be crime. But it means that mass annihilations are riskier than they otherwise would be, which means they're less likely. Doesn't mean they can't happen. It means they're less likely. And one problem with this fallacy is that, sad to say, a lot of pro-gun people fall into it too. So a lot of pro-gun people also have a double standard where they lionize the police and military, especially not necessarily the government always, but those two branches of it anyway. And I've always, this is not a good idea. We shouldn't be antagonistic with anybody automatically, and it's good to be friends with people who are police and military, and it's good to talk with them, but you should never just assume that they have your best interests at heart and that they are more responsible or more moral than other people, because they're not. They're just as fallible as anybody else, and actually the incentives are such that they're more likely to commit abuses. Very few of us could just kill somebody and just say, well, I saw furtive movements and walk away. Police basically can do that. Military people, they can't really do it domestically, at least in the United States in most cases, but in other countries they've done it domestically. But the argument basically, though, I mean, when you hear a gun control person say, well, you shouldn't have a handgun, why should police have handguns? You see this, it's so weird, because they'll say, oh, if you have a handgun, you might trip and fall, and the handgun will go off and kill a bystander. And that's possible, I suppose, but there's no reason a police officer couldn't also do that. And if I shouldn't be allowed to have a handgun because I might trip and fall and have it accidentally go off, then logically neither should the cop. Or what they always say, you'll be talking and you say, well, we should allow people to carry guns because then if there's a mass shooting, someone like Joe Zamudio might be able to rush in and save the day. And they say, oh no, you won't know who's who and you might shoot the wrong person. And that's true, that could happen. But that's also true for police officers. And actually, I've seen there's some statistics that show they actually get it wrong more, just because they're coming on scene new. If you were on scene from the get-go, you might be better able to identify an actual assailant rather than somebody who rushes to the scene from miles away or whatever. So this double standard, this polylogism, is just nonsensical. Polylogism in general is a nonsensical idea, and when it's used, it's used in economics and other political philosophy as well, and it's just it's a rationale that just breaks down on its own right away, and yet it's the implied position of all gun control people who are not consistent. So the people who say there should be no guns at all in society, this critique does not apply to them. I've never met one of those people in real life. I know that they do exist, but even within the gun control movement, they're essentially nobody. So always be looking out for this, and don't fall into yourself, because it's a dangerous fallacy. But it's still a fallacy. So.